For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for instant analysis of USC's 56-24 loss to the number 7 ranked Oregon Ducks. Now, Dan, this is a game where USC actually led 10-0 at one point, and then the second quarter happened, and it was kind of disaster for USC from there. We talked to players and coaches after the game. Mainly, the players didn't really know what to say about what happened in the game. I know Brett Neal on the center said that it was kind of blitzkrieg in that second half towards the end. What do you make of this game? Where do you even begin?
Well, I think it reminds you almost too much of some of the things that happened last year when things started going bad. There were 4 games last year where they had double-digit leads, and they got kind of, nobody. You didn't have a 56-7 run, though. I mean, it's just hard to even imagine. I don't know that if any of these kids have ever been on a team where you're up 10 and then all of a sudden 56-7 the other way, 49-point swing. I mean, that's just almost impossible to comprehend how bad this went, how fast it went bad, how you really are kind of feeling good the first couple of possessions and playing defense, and it looks like, oh, okay, this is going to be okay. And then it wasn't okay so fast, you just, your head swim.
Yeah, I think in the big picture, if you think of a loss to a number 7 ranked team, I think you're okay with it to some extent. But when you think about how USC was in it, the way they lost, and just the blowout fashion that they lost, it just makes this loss even more unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, you're listening to a kid like Brett Neal, who we were talking about, what a great, kid that come out and stand up for the team and all that, where a lot of the coaches didn't. But he's trying to go through all the things that happened kind of at the end of that second quarter, and he's talking about the kickoff return and the time they didn't score when they should have scored, and the turnover here and the turnover there. And then he went, oh, I forgot the pick 6. And I'm thinking, when so many things go wrong in such a short, compressed time, that even your own guys forget the pick 6. I mean, most games, that pick 6 is like a really big deal. Here it was just, oh, I forgot the pick 6. I mean, everything that could go wrong pretty much did go wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, how much do you want to talk about the ticky-tacky things of this game versus the overall picture? I know Clay Helton was asked in his post-game press conference, what makes you think that you can be the leader of this team going forward? And he thanked whoever asked that question and said that he'll fight for each game, fight until he's asked not to do so. And we've strayed away from talking about Clay Helton and his job going in this season, but I think it's time to ask about it now, Dan. What do you take away from this game and where Clay Helton stands?
Yeah, I mean, he said, I'll keep getting up every day and fighting for these guys and until they tell me not to anymore. And, with the naming of potentially naming of the new AD maybe on Monday, and everybody's looking forward to that. I think the question is, and the kids were asked it, and some of them, opined about it, is, does that happen? Does somebody tell him, it's not your time to keep getting up and fighting for this team? Because one of the things Clay said is, I want to get these kids a championship. I really, really want to. And, when you have a game like tonight, this is not a team that's going to get a championship. Yeah. It wasn't a team that was going to get a championship last year. And how much longer do you go? I mean, you can say, I want to get them a championship, but I don't know that anybody came out of that game from USC tonight feeling like, we've got a championship team. We're getting closer to a championship. We're improving. We're getting better. I mean, I don't think, anything that happened tonight made you think, ooh, this team is getting better as a team. There were some good plays, but this is unacceptable, obviously. Obviously unacceptable. And they played Oregon's a nice team. They're really well coached. They're a big-time program. They act like a big-time program. But they were kind of beatable there at the start. Yep. And then all of a sudden, they just keep playing, and they just keep playing. And USC doesn't keep playing. And you always think that kind of is a reflection of how you practice. I just don't think you can ever get away from the team that's out there playing is a team that's practicing every day. And I do think that's where the disconnect comes from USC. I don't think they put the guys under as much pressure as you get under when you're playing an Oregon, even if you get off to a good start, which tells you USC probably has the players who can stay on the field with Oregon if they will stay on the field, and if they don't make those killer mistakes, and if they don't lose their concentration and their focus and and they get all, discombobulated by all kinds of things, including, Oregon, constantly talking to them and getting them to kind of lose their cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of that happened. It's just every way you look at this game, you have to say, this is not how a USC football team playing at home should ever look.
Now, you mentioned Clay Helton and his goal of USC returning to the Pac-12 championship. Technically, too, they moved further away from that, just not in the way that they played, but also standings. Utah beat Washington today, and USC losing to Oregon makes them not control their destiny anymore. Clay Helton said that all they can do is focus on themselves, and hopefully they get a little help from the conference. But if you're Clay Helton, that's been your goal this whole season, win or lose. Now that that's further away, what do they play for now?
I think the one thing they got to play for is a bowl game. I mean, they've already missed one year where I know C.J. Pollard was talking about we don't want people laughing at us. And, that was the case last year. And so, he said, getting to a bowl game is huge. So now they've got 2 road games in UCLA. They have to win one of those. I mean, obviously, if you're a USC fan, you say, heck, they ought to win all 3. But last year, they lost all 3 of those games, and 2 of them they lost at home.
Yeah.
So, are they? I mean, I think the most nervous thing about this is this a reversion to what we saw in the finish last year? And if that's the case, this is a gigantic step backwards. I don't think we know, but you can ask that question after tonight and say, is this team moving in the direction that last year's team moved in the second half of the season?
And USC's players were certainly asked that post-game. They were asked if they felt like they're fighting for Clay Helton's job. I mean, at this point, do you think that there's something that can happen on the field that will help Clay Helton, or is this basically determined up to the AD, the new AD, and Carol Folt?
Yeah, there's nothing I don't think that can help Clay Helton at this point. I mean, you can't, after you've been here for as many years as Clay's been, you can't be going week to week to week. You've got to, I can't even imagine how far back this game set them in terms of recruiting head to head against Oregon. I mean, we saw Coach Cristobal, he wasn't leaving the field after the game, and he wasn't leaving the Coliseum after the press conference. He was talking to everybody, saying hi to everybody. He was just soaking it all in. Yeah. I mean, this was one of those nights where you think, if you're Coach Mario Cristobal, you're thinking, man, this is why I went into coaching. This is the night you're going to remember. Literally, he was almost the last person up the tunnel at the end of the night. He just could not have enjoyed it anymore. And if you're coming in to make inroads, as you already have in Southern California, in terms of recruiting, what does this night do for you? Yeah. Holy criminy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if this win is bigger for the football program itself or for the recruiting in itself. It's a double win in that sense. But as far as injuries go, if you still care about that at this point, Josh Fellow looked like he hurt his left hand. He had it heavily taped. He went to the locker room, I presume, for x-rays, but did return and play through it. Liam Jimmons came out, I believe, in the second quarter, and he hurt his shoulder. I believe he came back and was not dressed out and had a sling on his arm, but we didn't get injury updates because obviously there were more pressing matters. But Dan, anything else to talk about? Any final thoughts? Because it's pretty much bad news for USC going forward.
I mean, I was surprised that, first of all, when the game got as far away from USC as it did, that they had Palio Nialatiote out on the field. And then he got hurt. And then they had him back out there.
Yeah.
It was like, should he have ever even been in that game as lopsided as it was? And then after he gets hurt, should he have gone back out there? There were just weird stuff going on. I mean, I will tell you this. After the first half, you looked at the stats, and Oregon had 113 yards total offense and 112 yards in penalties. And they were winning 28-17 over a USC team that had almost double the yardage, had converted 8 of 12 third downs, had time of possession of 19 minutes and 30 seconds to Oregon's 10 minutes and 30 seconds, and USC was down 11 points. Yeah. It made no sense at all until you factor in the turnovers and a kickoff return and all those things that Brett Nealon said were the blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
That was, when you've been blitzkrieg, you're probably not the best person to ask what just happened to you. You just say, blitzkrieg. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. That's a good point. I guess, Dan, people look to you for you're kind of the lighthouse in the storm. What do you tell USC fans after a loss like this?
Maybe they'll, I don't think it's impossible for them to win each of these next 3 games. I don't think it's impossible for them to lose each of these next 3 games. I mean, you win each of the next 3 games, you're 8-4. I mean, everybody's like, whoa, that's pretty darn good. You lose the next 3 games, and where are you? 5-7 again. And oh my gosh, So, do we have any sense right now, after watching what we just watched, which of those 2 scenarios is going to be closer to reality? We have no idea. Yeah. They have no idea, and that's a problem.
Yep. Agreed. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up from the Coliseum. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.